when Bill Clinton was in his campaign and his advisor said to him, "It's the economy, stupid." Well, what Akamoglu and Robinson are saying in the book Why Nations Fail is the opposite. It's politics, stupid, what is in fact important in society. Because in this whole book, they try to explain the difference in a small city, that's the start of the book, in Mexico, on the border between Mexico and the United States. And the name of that little city, I think it's a big city, Nogales. And you have a northern part, and that's American. And you have a southern part, and that's Mexican. And in the Mexican part, there's corruption, they are poor, and I think that the income there is 4 times lower than the income in the north of Nogales. And how is it possible? Because, yeah, it's one city, there is a border, but you don't see it. The people there are Mexican, and in the north and in the south. They belong to the same families, they have the same skills, but those in the south are 4 times less wealthy than in the north. Well, the explanation is politics. Because there are credible, good institutions in the north of Nogales. There is the rule of law, there is no corruption, there is a system of justice, there are property rights, more clear. And in the south, yeah, there are problems with property rights, with the rule of law. There is a huge type of amount of corruption, and that explains the difference. It's a little bit, to give you another example, we could go to Korea, not with me, so certainly not in the north. I want to go in the south with you, but the difference between the north and the south Korea is exactly the same. Why? There is a poor, everybody is poor in the north. And there is enormous wealth in the south because of the difference in the political system, because of the different institutions. And that's the reason why I'm saying it's politics, stupid, at the end, what counts. If you can create a good environment, if you can create a rule of law, if you can create a free market based on clear property rights, if you can create all this, then you can create wealth in every society, everywhere in the world, without corruption and with certainty. And why I'm telling this story, because it's not true naturally that I'm not going to say anything about Europe. I'm going to tell you something about Europe, because I think that the problems that we are facing in Europe for the moment are linked to that problem. The lack of good political institutions for the moment in the European Union. Because it's not normal that huge parts of the world are growing. Normally I start with China, but I have to be a little bit cautious now, but they are still growing. You have India with huge growth figures. You have countries like Brazil, you have the African continent, they have a growth for the moment between 4 and 5% in real terms. In Africa, what was always, we thought that was impossible to have genuine economic growth there without our help. No, they are growing for the moment with 4 or 5%. There is a growth in the US of 3% for the moment. And they are thinking to increase. I don't know if there has all been taken a decision by the Federal Reserve Board today, but the idea is to increase the interest rates again to stop the overheating of the American economy, because they have a growth of 3% in real terms. When you look to all this, there is one region in the world who has a real problem, Europe. A real problem with no growth at all, with economic stagnation, because don't make a mistake, if you have a growth in a country between 0 and 2%, in economic terms, it's stagnation. It's not growth. It's growth that is just enough to continue, but certainly not to lower the unemployment rate in a substantial manner. So why is that happening? That every country, that every region in the world has recovered from the financial crisis in 2008 on one exception. That is Europe. That is still in the middle of an economic crisis, still in the aftermath of a financial crisis. On top of that, we have a sovereign debt crisis in Europe. Well, my explanation for that is it's politics, stupid. Because we don't have, for the moment, in Europe, the political institutions that we need to play a role in a competition with China, with India, with the United States, and with other important powers in the world. We are still based on national markets mainly. We know, I know, people shall say, yeah, but we already created the internal market. Yeah, the internal market, but it's not for all goods and not for all services. Most of the services are, the internal market is not applicable on most of the services. On top of that, the energy market is still national markets. Capital markets, don't talk about capital markets. Capital markets are still national markets. Mortgage is still national. And not to talk about digital, for example, or telecommunications. It's the best thing what you can do is to try to use your mobile when you go from one country to another country. For 20 kilometers you don't have any coverage, and you have to wait until the national you enter in the sphere of another operator to use your mobile. So, not in digital, not in capital, not in the telecom markets, not in the energy market. We have a real